everyone, welcome to this channel. On this video, we're going to discuss about the exploration and economic change. In the 15th and 16th centuries, the social, economic, religious, and scientific changes that had been taking place in the Western Europe all came together to bring out an era of worldwide expansion and explorations. At the same time, the Renaissance and Reformations were altering European society and culture. Daring seafarers were making discoveries to transform economic life. This chapter discusses the discoveries of the age's explorations and the changes that brought about a revolution in the world economic life, and we are going to discuss each outline. Number 1. The Western Europe expands. Number 2. Voyages of exploration bring change. Number 3. The Spanish and Portuguese settled the Americas. Number 4. The Dutch, English, and French gain colonies. And number 5. The changes bring a revolution in economic life. What factors motivated the Europeans to explore the world? There are 3 factors that motivate them in exploring the world: the gold, the cad, and the glory. The Western Europe expands. In the 15th and 16th centuries, there have been European expansion movements during the Middle Ages. Many nations were looking for goods such as silver and gold, but one of the biggest reasons for exploration was the desire to find a new route for spices. Merchants acquire power and influence. The merchant class was a vital factor in bringing about the age of exploration. Some merchants also held considerable political power, and many rulers were deeply in debt to wealthy merchants and bankers. Religious zeal encourages expansion. The desire to spread Christianity was another reason for the European voyage to distant parts of the world. Spanish and Portuguese felt that they had a God-given. The Renaissance fosters a spirit of adventure. Individualistic spirit of the Renaissance helped launch the age of exploration. All were driven by curiosity, the desire for glory, and the hope of fame. Improvements in ships and navigation make long voyages possible. Aside from their motives for gold, God, and glory, another important influence was the technological progress that made long voyages possible. Prince Henry of Portugal encouraged exploration. Prince Henry is a younger son of King John I of Portugal. Being a Portuguese who had a strong anti-Muslim feelings, Prince Henry tried to begin a new crusade by capturing Muslim city. He sent Portuguese sea captains along the West African coast, and they traded in gold, ivory, and fish, but their most important goal was to find the sea route to east. Portugal leads in knowledge about the seas and adopted innovations in shipbuilding and navigation. Prince Henry spent his own fortune to establish a naval station. He collected information about the stars, tides, winds, and currents. His map makers used this information to draw maps of African coastal waters. Prince Henry himself made no voyages, but his success in advancing knowledge of the sea caused ancient writers to call him the navigator. Portugal explores the West African coast. Trading posts and plantations are the basis for empire. It became the economical base. The Portuguese established 2 profitable institutions in West Africa: the fortified trading post and the plantations. and this became the economic base for Portugal's overseas empire. The post provided a central point where traders stored goods to sell or barter for slaves or African products. Landmarks and technology. Developments in technology played a great part in bringing about the age of exploration. Navigational instruments and new ship designs helped to make long voyages possible. The backstop, astrolabe, and the cruise staff are the same navigational instrument used to measure the altitude of a celestial body, the sun or the moon, while the caravels make it possible to sail against wind with its triangular sails. Voyages of exploration bring change. The first of the journey associated with the Age of Discovery were conducted by the Portuguese. Portuguese in Asia. In 1498, Portuguese reached India. They acquired fortune to buy products to Indians. Indian merchants took advantage. Da Gama was displeased and his instinct resorted to terrorism using their ships and canyons. In 1488, Portuguese explorer Bartolomeu Dias became the first European mariner to round the southern tip of Africa, opening the way for a sea route from Europe to Asia. A major maritime victory for Portugal, Dias' breakthrough opened the door to increase trade with India and Asian powers. Vasco da Gama was a Portuguese explorer who is famous for being the first European to reach India by sea, thus establishing a maritime route between Europe and Asia. His discovery had far-reaching consequences, not only giving a huge boost to the economy of his country through trade but also leading the way to European imperialism in the East. Here are the 10 major accomplishments and achievements of da Gama. Number 1. Da Gama linked Europe and Asia through an ocean route. Number 2. His discovery is considered a milestone in world history. Number 3. He led the Portuguese expedition to India. Number 4. He was the first known European to visit Mombasa. Number 5. Vasco da Gama was the first European to reach India by sea. Number 6. His expedition to India and back to Portugal was the longest ever ocean voyage. Number 7. His discovery led to drastic expansion of the Portuguese economy. Number 8. He was given the title of Admiral of the Seas of Arabia, Persia, India, and all the Orient. Number 9. He was the 6th governor of the Portuguese state of India. And number 10. He is among the most prominent figures in the history of exploration. While the Portuguese were opening new sea routes along Africa, the Spanish also dreamed of finding new trade routes to the Far East. Christopher Columbus, an Italian working for the Spanish monarchy, made his first journey in 1492. An Italian mariner, Christopher Columbus, proposed to sail westward to India, but King John II of Portugal rejected the idea. Queen Isabella of Spain provided Columbus with funds to outfit a small fleet, the caravels Niña and Pinta, and the flagship Santa Maria. The fleet sailed first from Spain to the Canary Islands, leaving the Canary Islands on September 6, 1492. Columbus offered the prize to the sailor who first saw land. On the early morning watch of October 12, the lookout in the Pinta saw white sand gleaming in the moonlight and shouted that they had found land. Tierra, tierra! Instead of reaching India, Columbus found the island of San Salvador in what is known today as the Bahamas. He also explored the island of Hispaniola, home of modern-day Haiti and the Dominican Republic. After visiting the island of Hispaniola, where the Santa Maria was wrecked, Columbus set sail for Spain in the Niña. He took some of the Arawaks with him to prove that he had reached Asia. He called them Indians. Delighted by the voyage, the Queen gave Columbus the title Admiral of the Ocean Sea. Columbus makes later voyage. Columbus would lead 3 more voyages to the Caribbean, exploring parts of Cuba and the Central American coast. Spain and Portugal agree to divide the world. Rulers of Spain immediately sent the news of Columbus' first voyage to Pope Alexander VI. To prevent disputes between the two empires, the Pope established an imaginary line of demarcation in the Atlantic Ocean. It gives Spain possessions of all lands west of Europe, and Portugal was to have the lands in the east of the line. In 1494, diplomats from two empires met at Tordesillas, Spain. The revised treaty line allowed Portugal to claim what is now Brazil, and Spain was given the rest of the Americas. A map maker names the new continents. On May 10, 1497, an Italian navigator, Amerigo Vespucci, embarked on his first voyage. On his third and most successful voyage, he discovered presently Rio de Janeiro and Rio de Plata. Believing he had discovered a new continent, he called South America the New World. In 1507, America was named after him. He died of malaria in Spain on February 22, 1512. What achievements were made by Balboa and Ponce de Leon? Yes, de Balboa. He was a Spanish explorer and known for having cruised the Isthmus of Panama to the Pacific Ocean in 1513, becoming the first European to lead an expedition to have seen or reached the Great South Sea, or what is now called the Pacific Ocean. Juan Ponce de Leon is the man behind the legendary search of Fountain of Youth. He was a Spanish explorer and the first European to step onto Florida land. He named it Pascal de Florida, which means the Feast of Flowers. He discovered the Gulf Stream, which would become important for Spanish trips from Europe to America. He is known for searching the Fountain of Youth to cure his aging. The most believe he was actually searching for gold instead. Magellan's fleet circumnavigates the globe. After having his proposed expeditions to the Spice Islands repeatedly rejected by King Manuel of Portugal, Magellan turned to Charles I, King of Spain, to finance an expedition to explore the Pacific Ocean and its islands. Magellan's 5 ships Santiago, San Antonio, Concepcion, Trinidad, and Victoria left Spain on September 1519. Santiago was wrecked after a terrible storm off the coast of today's Argentina. San Antonio deserted while crossing the Strait of All Saints, or later renamed Strait of Magellan. Concepcion was born in the Philippines on May 2, 1521 due to her very bad condition. Trinidad arrived to the Molucco Islands, or Moluccas today, in a very bad shape and finally sank during a storm. Victoria was the only survivor. The ship made it around the world, sailing about 15 times the distance of Columbus' first trip to America. Returning with 24 tons of globes, only 18 sailors completed the voyage. The first circumnavigation of the globe showed that the Pacific Ocean separated Asia and America, and that this ocean was much larger than suspected. In addition, the voyage demonstrated that all the oceans on Earth are connected and that the trade winds follow a consistent pattern affecting weather and navigation. The Spanish and Portuguese settled to Americas. Spain commissioned voyages to explore the new worlds across the ocean. By the early 1500s, when the Spaniards arrived on the mainland, two Native American people had built strong states that controlled large territories. In early 1500, what powerful states ruled large parts of Mexico and Peru? There are two states that controlled Peru and Mexico, the Aztecs and the Incas. The word Aztecs came from Aztlan, mythical place in northern Mexico, and the Incas means empire, and their empire ended in 1572. These two states were both successful with imperial and military organization. Both had intensive agriculture organized by the state that created a food surplus. Both redistributed resources to all classes. Both of them used nobles to run state machinery, and both recognized local ethnic groups, although the Inca did spread their culture and language. They developed systems of rules and advanced engineering techniques, and they were both polytheistic and made human sacrifices to the gods. And both of the states were defeated by the Spanish. Spaniards seek gold in the Americas. The Spaniards' desire for gold led them to mainland, where they soon overthrew the rich, powerful Aztec and the Inca states. Hernan Cortes was a courageous, charming, and ruthless conquistador. He sailed from Cuba to the Gulf Coast of Mexico in 1519. To prevent his outnumbered soldiers leaving, Cortes ordered the ship sank and began to march inland. He persuaded the Tlaxcalans who hated Aztec rule to join him against the Aztecs. Malinche, an Aztec noblewoman who had been sold to slavery, aided Cortes in dealing with the local traders. She acted as both interpreter and informer, and her knowledge and influence helped Cortes make allies of other Indians. Spaniard Hernan Cortes' armies and allies crossed the mountains of the lake city of Tenochtitlan. Aztec ruler Moctezuma had died, and the city was captured and Cortes had claimed the Aztec Empire for Spain. Spanish weaponry and tactics played a role, but most of the destruction was brought by epidemics of European disease. His ally in this fight, where he and his men unwittingly brought with him. Francisco Pizarro had gained permission from Spain's ruler Emperor Charles V to attempt the conquest of the South American coast. Not one Spaniard died in the fierce fighting that killed hundreds of the Inca people. Atahualpa's ransom. Atahualpa, the Inca ruler, was taken prisoner by Pizarro's soldiers. They promised to set Atahualpa free on the payment of a great ransom, a room full of gold. Once the gold had been collected from throughout the empire, Pizarro ordered Atahualpa strangled. The Spanish only settled a few areas in North America. Their focus was more in South America. The Spaniards also brought their language and the Catholic religion to the Indians of the lands they conquered. Spanish exploited resources and labor from their newly colonized territories. Southern America was rich in both timber and precious metals, and harvesting the gold and silver in the area made the empire very rich. To do their hard work on the plantations and in the mines, the settlers and the descendants, called Creoles, used the Indian peasants called peons. Bartolome de las Casas was one of the first missionaries to the Indians and began a lifelong campaign to protect Indians from colonists who were interested only in the profits to be made from their labor. King Ferdinand supported the work of Las Casas and named him Protector of the Indians. Catholic Church sent many of Spain's best trained friars to the America to convert the Indians. The fleet of Cabral had made a wide arc into the western Atlantic and chanced upon the coast of Brazil. This territory was immediately claimed for Portugal. Although forced labor and conquest killed many Indians, particularly in the Spanish colonies, the Indians' worst enemies were the new diseases brought to the Americas from Europe, Asia, and Africa. The Arawaks of the Caribbean islands were wiped out altogether. Tragic deaths of so many Indians caused a severe liver shortage in the Spanish colonies. Portuguese settlers in Brazil also needed livers for their newly established sugar plantations. The result was the importing of slave labor from Africa. African slaves eventually provided most of the heavy labor for plantations. Black people in the Americas adopted Christianity and European speech, clothing, and customs. Intermarriage was common between European or African men and Indian women in the colonies. Their children made up new population groups in the America. Mulattoes are the descendants of European and Black Africans, and the mestizos are those whose parents were European and Indian. Europeans' technology gave them enormous military and economic advantages over the Indians. They brought many new foods, breeding animals, and transportation. Dutch and English looked first for a route northeast to Asia and the Spice Islands. Henry Hudson, an English explorer, made 4 voyages in search of a northwest passage in 1609. Sailing for Dutch merchants, Hudson took his ship Half Moon up the Hudson River in 1524. Dutch settlers established the colony of New Netherland, including what is now New York City. An Italian navigator, Giovanni Cavuto, working for the English, searched what is believed to be the coast of Newfoundland. The Dutch decided to take over the Portuguese trade routes and set up their own trade with India and the East Indies. Dutch East India Company, founded in Dutch Republic or Netherlands today, in 1602 to protect the state's trade in the Indian Ocean and to assist in the Dutch War of Independence from Spain. The company prospered through most of the 17th century as the instrument of the powerful Dutch commercial empire in the East Indies or present-day Indonesia. It was dissolved in 1799. Dutch West India Company. founded in 1621 mainly to carry on economic warfare against Spain and Portugal by striking at their colonies in the West Indies and South America and on the west coast of Africa. It was dissolved in 1794. With military and financial support from the States General or the Dutch National Assembly, the company acquired ports on the West African coast to supply slaves for plantations in the West Indies and South America. Dutch West India Company was much less successful than the Dutch East India Company, its counterpart in Southeast Asia. England concentrated on developing its trade and sea power. English had to fight both rival traders and pirates from other countries. Traders fought both the Portuguese and the French to gain trading posts in India, and the English privateers, sailing with royal approval, captured Spanish treasure ships and attacked ports in South America. Territories chosen for the first English settlements in the Americas were in areas unclaimed by Spain or Portugal. The first colony was founded at Plymouth in 1620 and followed few years later at Massachusetts Bay Colony. The French took South Territory in the Americas. French King hoped the Northwest Passage would be found there and sent out several expeditions. Cartier reached St. Lawrence River and claimed for France the land that is now eastern Canada. Samuel de Champlain, father of New France, founded the first permanent French colony in Quebec or North America. Sieur de La Salle, French nobleman who claimed the inter-Mississippi Valley for France and named it Louisiana for King Louis XIV. France finds colonial wealth in Africa and the Caribbean. The islands France acquired in the West Indies were far more profitable. Large sugar plantations, worked by slaves imported from Africa through France trading posts, brought in wealth. Saint-Domingue on the island of Hispaniola, one of France's colony, was regarded as the richest colonial possession in the world. Britain's destroy France's colonial empire. A general conflict among European nations brought Britain and France into competition not only in Europe but also over their colonial territories. 7 Years' War, the most significant war known in the American history as the French-Indian War. France's island colonies in the Caribbean and its slave trading posts in Africa fell to the British. In the Treaty of Paris 1763, France lost nearly all its North American colonial possessions but was given back its rich sugar colonies in the Caribbean. French land in Canada went to Britain, while the Louisiana Territory from Mississippi River westward went to Spain. Changes bring a revolution in economic life. Commercial Revolution. Important changes occurred in ways of carrying business and trade. But the greater changes took place in the basic ways that people thought about money and all the economic aspects. Mercantilism. Economic system used to unify and increase the power and especially the monetary wealth of a nation. One of mercantilist principles was that the state should accumulate wealth in form of bullion, to gold and silver. In order to increase the country's supply of bullion, the rulers encouraged exports, which brought money in the country. They discouraged or forbade buying foreign goods to stop precious metals from leaving the country. Mercantilists sought colonies that would be profitable for the home country. Colony was expected to supply wealth, either gold or silver, from its mines or other valuable products. Rulers in other Europeans realized that one way to weaken Spain was to cut off the flow of bullion from the Americas. Admiral Piet Hein is a Dutch naval officer. In 1628, he sailed out to capture the Spanish treasure fleet loaded with silver from the American colonies. The treasure was the company's greatest victory in Caribbean, which helped the Dutch finance their war against the Spanish rule and made Hein a Dutch national hero. Inflation damaged Europe's economy. Huge new supply of precious metals was desirable from a mercantilist point of view, but it created problems. Wealthy Europeans bought more goods and food. As this product became scarce, prices began to rise. At the same time, population throughout Europe was growing, and more people need more food and other goods. The inflation affected different groups of people. Because people were demanding more goods than Europe could produce, foreign trade boomed. The profit motives bring changes in agriculture. The demand for more food led some English landlords to change the traditional ways of using farmland, and they raised rents on farmlands. Like trade, agriculture had become commercial. Farmland and farm labor had become things that were bought and sold. Trade lays the foundation for capitalism. Modern capitalism can be seen first in the busy town life and prosperous trade that developed in the late Middle Ages. Capital includes money and goods such as land and plantations, ships and shops that are used to make money. Capitalism is a system characterized by private or corporate ownership of capital goods. Three characteristics of capitalism. Private ownership. Capital belongs to individuals who are free to decide what to do with it. Profit motive. It is the wish to make a profit, an essential part of capitalism. Market economy. Way of living that depended on buying and selling goods and services. A changed and changing world. Age of exploration and commercial revolution caused great and lasting changes. People could think of the world in global terms, look at their lives in economic terms, buying and selling, making a profit. Changes occurred as people were exposed to one another's idea. Europe becomes the center for world trade. Commercial revolution put Europe at the center of worldwide trade. Europeans were investors, bankers, and profit takers. Knowledge of the earth increased. Age of exploration and the commercial revolution produced a flood of new information about geography, animals' life, plants and minerals. New knowledge of the world and its resources inspired a revolution in science. New kinds of foods are grown. Settlers and explorers found new foods which were shipped from one part of the world to another. These explorations introduced a whole new world of flora and fauna to Europeans. Shifts in the world's population. Although diseases struck the cities of Europe, the European population kept growing because of an improved food supply. Perhaps the most significant consequences of the age of exploration was the settlement of the lands in the Western Hemisphere by people of diverse races and nationalities. New nations with multicultural societies began to emerge. The era known as the Age of Exploration, sometimes called Age of Discovery, officially began in the early 15th century and lasted through the 17th century. The period is characterized as a time when Europeans began exploring the world by sea in search of new trading routes, wealth, and knowledge. The impact of the Age of Exploration would permanently alter the world and transform geography into the modern science it is today. This is the end of our presentation. Thank you for watching. We are the presenters, Cindy Villarante Aloat, Umapas Jinky B, from Best and Second Year students, saying, "We can do this para sa bayan at sa kinabukasan."